I'm doing this video in the truck because tensions are rising at breakneck speeds. Today, the Houthis have ostensibly declared war against the Israelis. Now, there's going to be some people who are stricken with the normalcy bias that will say things like, well, this is not an official declaration of war because you could see right here by Article 5 of the Charter and blah, blah, blah. They merely lobbed some harmless ballistic missiles at Israel's nuclear power plants. That's all they did. This wasn't a declaration of war. Understand that strategic ambiguity is a thing in modern warfare, and you'll notice that almost no country declares war on any other group anymore, with the exception of maybe the Israelis declaring war on Hamas, and I don't even know if that was an official declaration of war. Usually they're going to make some euphemistic terminology, they'll wrap it in the veil of some political speak in order to achieve their objectives. Yes, they'll state the objective that we're going to do such and such, but it's never a formal declaration of war. The Yemeni spokesperson came out today and explicitly stated that we are going to continue to lob ballistic missiles at the Israelis, along with Hezbollah, likely, and we're possibly going to be lobbing these missiles at the Dimona nuclear power plant. Now, understand the gravity of that situation. If, in fact, it is true that this Yemenis propaganda that we're seeing, and it's not all Yemenis, you need to understand that there's two warring groups within Yemen. There was a civil war. One side's backed by the United States, the other side's backed by Iran. It's the side that's backed by Iran, hypothetically anyways, as far as we know, that is launching these, and I say hypothetically because there's so many, this is a big mess of a Venn diagram of interrelations that are going on here. But what's effectively going on is that the Houthis, who are a very well-armed Iranian-backed group inside of Yemen, who control a sizable portion of that country, are launching missiles at Israel and Israel's allies, and it's a much more complicated situation than I can ever begin to even try to comprehend, much less break down for other people. So I'm just going to leave that there. But they have, for all intents and purposes, effectively with their actions of targeting a sovereign nation with heavy ordnance, ballistic missiles, okay, they have effectively declared war. Now, what this is going to do is ultimately get either the United States or Israel. It is going to elicit a response from those countries. Now, when this happens, does Iran get involved? But there is more. And listen to exactly what Senator Lindsey Graham said today. He said that, and remember, if you didn't watch our video that we did yesterday where we interview our guest, Joel Skousen, I would encourage you to go and check it out because he said this very thing. He said that they would do this very thing. Listen to this. Is it a red line for Iran to orchestrate an attack on our forces that kills an American? This is a tweet by Lindsey Graham. Can we say publicly to the families who have service members over in Iraq and Syria that we will hit Iran if they kill an American through their proxies? Can we say that? So, Lindsey Graham is saying that if any Americans die by the hands of these attacks that are currently occurring across the Middle East, I think there's been 30 some odd attacks. There's probably more right now. The Gaza Strip looks like a nuclear war zone, and I think that that's foreshadowing what a lot of cities are going to look like. And the worse that situation gets, the more Israeli casualties they incur, the harder they're going to bomb, the more civilians they're going to bomb, and the greater the retaliation is going to be from the wider Muslim world. But what Lindsey Graham is saying here, that the sacrificial lambs that are currently at U.S. military bases illegally occupying numerous oil facilities in Syria, in Iraq, that they are likely going to be leveraged in some way, shape, or form to bring us into a broader conflict. Now, I'm not saying that this is going to be something that is orchestrated. I'm just saying that the chances are that this is going to happen because we do have a large contingent of troops, relatively speaking, around 30,000 troops peppered throughout the Middle East. Most of those are in the Emirate states. I forget the exact terminology for those states that are on the periphery of the Persian Gulf. But a lot of those military personnel are there, but there's many throughout Iraq and Syria as well. So if you start seeing Americans coming home in body bags, that's potentially going to give them the license they need for a broader intervention. Ultimately, this ends with a war in Iran. There's been so much incredible posturing in the last 24 hours. There's a lot of people who are completely oblivious because right now the markets are kind of flat. The markets have no idea what is about to happen. The greater the war in Gaza gets, and it is getting, the Israelis are getting lit up right now, as are the guys that are fighting, Hamas. But the Israelis are now starting to admit casualties, which tells you that the situation is not going very well. And every time they take on these casualties, because they're a very casualty-averse military, they're going to spend another $100 million in weapons to try to kill the 5 or 6 guys that they may or may not hit with these massive bombardments. And this war is going to go on for a long time. Every time they do that, more Palestinians are going to die. And every time that happens, you're going to see greater and greater repercussions around the world. We could see the awakening of sleeper cells around the world. We have just diplomatic relations being severed all over the place. Bolivia cut ties with Israel today. Turkey cut ties with Israel a few days ago. We have the Russian primary mouthpiece, the primary propaganda mouthpiece of the Kremlin, Soloviev. He's the guy, most of you have seen him. He has a Twitter account, and I actually, I agree with a lot of what he says, to be brutally honest, but that's another story. He speaks for the Russian government when he says, and he totally destroys this Israeli diplomat who is trying to, use what happened in World War II as justification to perpetuate war crimes with impunity. And I'm not even going to take an issue on that for this particular video because we got to stay focused here. I know it's very easy to jump in and start, fighting people in the comment section about this is my opinion, this is your opinion. Stay focused because all your energy is someday likely at this rate going to be towards the survival of you and your family. And it's going to be interesting to see how quickly politics, religion, all of that stuff, anything you identify with goes by the wayside when all you're trying to do is survive. Okay? So anyways, he's arguing with this Israeli diplomat, and it's the most heated exchange I've seen on Russian television, and it's quite telling, this massive rift that is forming between Israel and Russia, because this guy speaks for Vladimir Putin, and I've never seen an outburst like the one that I seen. I'll probably play some clips if I do another daily update later on today, but it was quite telling as in terms of where we're at. So in terms of the Yemenis declaring, or the Houthis of Yemen declaring war on Israel, General Yahya Saree, and if you don't know who the Yemenis are, they're a very well-armed group. They're they're not casualty averse, okay? They've been fighting a war for a long time. They're not strangers to conflict, which is not to say that they have the best training and it's going to be like the Iraqi, the Iraqi Revolutionary Guard. They thought they were going to, lose a bunch of guys, and 80 guys the U.S. lost. It's not going to be a situation like that where it's a cakewalk, but it's not going to be the other way either. For starters, you have all this U.S. warships in the region for that very purpose, but the Yemenis and Hamas and Hezbollah, I believe, are all kind of coordinating their strikes so to diminish the capability of the Israelis and the Americans to intercept missiles, because that's what this is all about at the end of the day. And the Iron Dome is failing right now. There's numerous video clips coming out now of Tel Aviv getting lit right up. Okay, none of these, or very few of these missiles seem to be getting intercepted, at least in the last 24 hours. Was there some sort of hack job? Was there some sort of communications error? Did somebody, maybe just look the other way because they needed a bit more PR? I don't know. But what we know is that eventually those Iron Dome missiles, the spend rate is 100 to 1. They're going to run out. It's way too expensive. The U.S. is in irrevocable debt. I wanted to use that word today. Irrevocable debt. Okay, we're in insurmountable debt up to our frickin' necks. Us as in Canada and the US, you guys go down, we go down with you. So we can't sustain this. This is a burn rate that we simply can't sustain, and they know it. And I think Hamas, in coordinating with their little rockets, Hezbollah with their even bigger rockets, Yemen with its even bigger rockets, and Iran with the massive guns just waiting to unload when all of their proxies have done their job of exhausting and depleting the anti-missile systems of US and Israel. That's when the war is really going to start. I do believe that this is coordinated on some level. I mean, we got to ask ourselves, why the hell are the Yemenis getting involved in this? You know, I mean, is this just to galvanize for their own cause? A lot of this would be that, but to what end? To imperil themselves? Would this be politically useful if you brought war and brought your own annihilation? And when I say politically useful, you notice a lot of Muslim leaders right now, because every leader in the world pretty much is unpopular right now, with the exception of Vladimir Putin, and we don't know how credible those numbers are. And maybe Xi Jinping to some extent. But again, you know, a lot of them are just surrounded by yes men. But everybody's numbers are down, and everybody's numbers benefits from a common enemy. And poll numbers, I'm talking about popularity benefits from a common enemy, not necessarily going to war, but if you have to, you will. But you're seeing all of these Muslim leaders posturing because they know in times of great hardship, as we've seen over the last 3 years, people are struggling, not in the well-off Saudi, royal circles, but you know what I'm talking about, the average common person across the Middle East probably isn't doing so well. And when they see this tribalism emerging and this religious rift occurring, as even if you might think that it's all a smokescreen and it's not real, and Jews and Muslims and Christians really get along on, in the real world and whatever, it doesn't really matter. This is what people are seeing. Okay. So this means that they're incentivized to seize on this discontent and channel it towards the direction of war. Now, when you do that, you can control it to a certain degree. You can ensure that it doesn't get out of hand. In your country, perhaps, and even in Russia, we're seeing that that's not necessarily the case with respect to what happened in Dagestan, although the Russians are saying that that was an attempt by the outside to subvert. The biggest thing that we need to realize is that right now, according to some images being published on the internet, the Yemenis have in their crosshairs, or I should say the Houthis. It's not even the majority of Yemen, okay? But apparently they have in their crosshairs the Dimona nuclear plant. Now, this would be a radiological event. This would be the absolute justification that Israel would need to target Iranian nuclear facilities, to effectively drop nukes. This is all they need. A radiological incident, a nuclear event. Even the Russians have said that they are going to treat the use of depleted uranium, the use of attacks on their nuclear facilities, as nuclear attacks, and that they will potentially respond in kind if they believe it to be a threat to their existence. So this is the ticket to use nuclear weapons. Right here, this is Israel's, one of their nuclear facilities, the primary one that develops, enriches plutonium for nuclear weapons. This is what it might all come down to. Now, the Houthis claim, or people are claiming, because we don't really know, the fog of war is thick, that wasn't their target, that their target was some other city or military installation somewhere. Regardless, the simple fact that they are targeting a sovereign nation, whether you agree with their cause or not, is effectively a declaration of war. That's what it is. You're never going to hear a country say out that we declare war against such and such anymore on this day. Those days are over. There is no sense in doing that unless, it's politically useful in some way to galvanize your population. You're not going to hear, and I'll eat my words if another country comes out tomorrow and effectively, like if Hezbollah, the leader, comes out on Friday, as some people think he is going to, because there's a special announcement. There's been tons of cryptic video symbolism being put out by their propaganda team, which is very industrious and very elaborate in their Machiavellian machinations, if you will, for propaganda purposes. They're very good at it, And it's a big part of their campaign, okay? And they're injecting all of this symbolism into these cryptic videos in the run-up to what some people say on Friday will be an announcement, which will be ostensibly a declaration of war, okay? Now, I just have to cancel this call real quick, and we will continue with the video. So anyways, we emphasize, this is what the leader, General Yahi Sari, said. He said that we launch a large number of ballistic and cruise missiles. So these aren't bottle rockets. And a large number of drones at various targets of the Zionist enemy in the Palestinian occupied territories. We emphasize that this operation is the third operation in our support of our oppressed brothers in Palestine. Well, when is the retaliation going to come? Oh, just wait. That's why all the warships are getting into position. You don't think that, Lindsey Graham, he's got his investments. I want to see Lindsey's portfolio right now, because that'll tell you exactly what's coming up. You should also know that the United States and the Saudi-backed government in Yemen have repeatedly accused Iran of funding the Houthi rebels, okay? And now the Iranian foreign minister was meeting with Hamas in Qatar today. They had just met in Moscow a couple days ago. I believe Sergei Shoigu was just meeting the top dog in China. And all of you got the North Koreans stockpiling food, saying that we need to get this stuff in the bag before November. I mean, shit's hitting the fan, guys. This is as if you needed any more confirmation, but there's still going to be people walking around with their jaws on the ground wondering what the hell happened when all of this finally flares up. Even the markets are acting absolutely ridiculous right now. We have Iran threatening Israel. Once again, Iran's deputy foreign minister for political affairs has warned that if Israel's ongoing war against the Palestinian resistance in Gaza expands any further, it will lead to total annihilation of the regime. Egypt decides to jump in. They want attention too. Egypt with that massive, the biggest amassing of military force that I've seen in some time, particularly in that part of the world. We showed you guys the videos the other day, something like 2 divisions of guys and tanks and the whole 9 yards. Well, they want some too. They are saying we are prepared to sacrifice millions of lives to ensure that no one encroaches upon our territory. This is one of a member of the Egyptian government, possibly the actual leader of the government. I'm not familiar with my Egypt politics, but I'm learning. They told the gathering in Sinai of military leaders, local tribal leaders, members of parliament, and other politicians that we are willing to sacrifice millions of people. Turkey didn't want to be left out of this royal rumble. They said, according to President Erdogan, he sent a clear message that if the countries of the region are ready to cooperate together, then we as Turkey are ready to participate, but that they are willing to effectively go to war with Israel over Palestine, which is why Israel has pulled their diplomats out of that place, okay? According to a Russian analyst, Fyodor Lokyanov, he believes that we are already in World War III. Tell us something we don't know. This is the thing with war and even the declaration of war. A lot of people looking for declarations of war. For me, a great analogy is the birth of a child, okay? The child is gestating for 9 months, okay? But it's not until they're born that we say that's when their birthday was, right? But they were actually gestating in the oven for 9 months before that. Right now, I'm not sure where through the gestation period of World War III we are, but we're getting very, very close to coming through the birth canal. And by birth canal, I mean nuclear wastelands as far as the eye can see. Take a look at what northern Gaza looks like tonight. That's what the world could potentially look like when all of this stuff flares up. So just because we haven't crossed that final demarcation line where the mainstream media is forced to call it World War III, just because a country hasn't formally declared war, especially when you have so many different warring factions within countries, so much civil war within all of these countries, you're never going to have any country really unanimously declare war anymore. For one, it's terrible PR at this point in time. It's always better to call it some sort of Operation Iraqi Freedom, special military operation. They're never going to call it a war. But the Russians knew that you prosecute a war in a way that is not going to create blowback. And that's what the Israelis completely and utterly have failed at. Now, I'm not going to... There is an argument to be made on both sides, but the way I see it, it was impulsive, it wasn't strategic at all, and it might bring about their destruction, the way that they are playing their hand right now. And I could be proven wrong in the long run, but it seems as though the more they rattle the hornet's nest, the greater the risk that a lot of people are going to get stung. And I would just strongly encourage everybody to be on your six, because unfortunately this is not something that is going to be limited to the Middle East. You have the clash of three religions, and some people again will say this is not a religious war. Yes, I agree. It's always about the secular greed. It's always about resources, but religions are utilized towards the ends of greedy people to fight with one another to realize those ends. So as such, one of the three biggest religions in the world, Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, although not one of the biggest, still very influential, of course, on the global stage. This fighting is going to reach a breaking point. We're going to see more awakening of sleeper cells. For all we know, as I stated in a video yesterday, part and parcel of this offensive that's coming with Hezbollah, and I'm not trying to a fearmonger for the government here, who likely, wants nothing more than to come and infringe on our rights and freedoms with some, rebranded Patriot Act or something like that, or War Measures Act. That's not what I want. But the reality is, we are primed for a situation where the activation of numerous sleeper agent cells who might not like us that much, activate it and do what they're going to do. And it's going to be random, it is going to be asymmetric, and it's going to catch a lot of people off guard. So in addition to just, squirreling away stuff for the end of days, you got to be mindful of your surroundings. When you go into any public place, and this is something that, most people who are preppers, who've been in the military, who are first responders, they know, but we often forget because we get complacent. Always know where the emergency exits are. Know what your game plan will be if somebody just starts spraying, especially if you don't have a firearm to defend yourself or you don't have other means to defend yourself, all right? Because I do believe that either way, this war is going to touch us in the form of massive military expenditures, asymmetrical terrorist attacks, or actually getting drafted voluntarily first, maybe going over into the military, or actually getting drafted, or World War III. Okay, so one of those ways it's going to affect us. Nobody is getting off the hook with this one. We all have to take a big bite of the crappy pie. My friends, stay up. I'll give you updates as they keep rolling in. Thanks for watching. Canadian Prepper out.